So let's have a Manhattan, because I feel like things are going to get heavy here.
So I don't want to say anything inappropriate. I can do mild cursing. Is that correct? Is that allowed?
Oh, you can say anything you want.
That's right.
And since you're a congressional short timer, I'm calling this episode Denver Unplugged.
I love it. Not Bigfoot Unplugged.
Bigfoot Unplugged. Well, that's part of the story. But first, I have to. Our sound man would like a cocktail.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, we got a toast, don't we?
Yeah.
Here soon. Do you want to start with the toast?
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
To Bigfoot erotica.
To Bigfoot erotica. Cheers. That's right. To chest thumping good times.
So you are the author of a brand new book.
I am.
And I have my greasy little hands on a copy here. Is this available to people yet?
It is on Amazon. It's about to be released on Barnes & Noble. Ebook coming out on both too, and an audiobook, which I start taping tomorrow. So they wanted to have a professional guy with a silky voice do it. Like, no, you need the inflection. You know, when you're talking about, people tent swapping in the middle of Olympic National Forest, you got to have the right tone.
Yeah.
So that, so I want to make sure that
you're nuanced in tone.
In tone, very nuanced. As you know, I'm subtle.
Yeah.
Very hard to read.
I feel like you have one tone, and it's 11 maybe.
It's when you worked at the National Security Agency for so long, and you were behind the green door, so to speak, and I know that means other things, by the way. But when you're behind the door for so long, you can be charismatic, have a great time, but there is one way on military intelligence, right? And it's get the job done, have a good time, and I brought that into Congress. I thought people would respond to it. I think they did in some ways, but in some ways, they didn't so much. So there you have it.
Yeah. So there's in this book there's sort of a gotcha moment, and I'm going to start with that.
Sure.
You don't know this is coming.
I don't.
And you may storm off set after I ask this question, but you're in the middle of the woods. You're in the Olympia forest.
Yep.
With a bunch of folks looking for Bigfoot.
Yes.
For reasons that I can't explain, your wife is still married to you after you dragged her into this experience.
That's right. We can talk about that prank later. 15-year marriage, going to take her to Hawaii and pranked her with a Bigfoot expedition. Not the best move I've ever made.
Yeah, you're still paying the price for that.
Yep, 16 years later.
But your fellow Bigfoot seekers discover that you're a former NSA operative or whatever you call yourself.
That's right.
Field officer, I don't know what.
NSA, they found out I worked for the National Security Agency, and they were talking about what everybody did for a living. And that first night or night before, I'd talked about some of the things that I did. But yeah, they started, I think, to get a little leery.
Yeah, but you were asked straight away, is there a government file at the NSA?
Yes.
About Bigfoot?
Yes, I was.
And you never say no. You never say no. You're like, I don't think so. I didn't see it. But you cannot categorically tell us tonight on this show that the government does not.
I'd be lying if I said that.
Yeah.
And but that's what I talked about in that chapter, which is one of my favorite chapters, is the thousands of intelligence caveats that are out there, right? And I wanted to sort of learn people up on the fact that, hey, there's signals intelligence, SIGINT. There's human intelligence, HUMINT. There's communications intelligence, COMET. There's even, nuclear type of intelligence with radioactivity called RENT. There's acoustic intelligence, which you have acoustant. You have all these different intelligences. And what I wanted to explain to people is that there's so many caveats and need to knows and so many layers and compartments and so many stratifications of clearances I would never know. But the other thing that I did point out is that maybe there is an analytical Sasquatch studies intelligence called ASCENT. And maybe with ASCENT, we could find it. But what I wanted to prove into the chapter is that it's very difficult to prove these type of things. But what really fascinated me about that individual is that he was absolutely sure, without a shadow of doubt, with no proof, no real tangible proof that Bigfoot existed, and on multiple planes. And I think that's what people will be surprised about this book is, as me and you, Matt, have talked about this. You've exposed the Bigfoot erotica fraud, that came out from newspapers. But it really comes down to is that people are easily led or believe things based on some prior set of belief systems. And that's why I think people will be surprised about this book, that it is really an intelligence analyst look at, different types of folks and what they believe in.
Side note, this is the best rye that I've had.
Cheers to that, brother.
Not made. So I American whiskey to me is like there's Kentucky and then there's the rest of the United States.
That's right.
And sometimes whiskeys made in other states for technical reasons I don't understand are just not that great. And you guys have cracked the code and are making beautiful bourbons and rye whiskeys, and congratulations on that.
Thank you. And a lot of it's my wife, as you know, and my daughter's a master now with her Scottish education that she got in fermentation and distillation. And again, by the way, some of this book was written as I was drinking. I know that might be
I'm shocked.
I know you're shocked, and
Yeah.
I know that's a revelation. It'll be on the morning news tomorrow. But some of this book was with bourbon or other types of spirits at hand.
I believe it was
as we
Ernest
look for.
Hemingway who said, "Write drunk and edit sober."
I
Can we fact check that?
I might have done that backwards. And if so, this is a hell of a book.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an interesting guy. And that chapter was a chapter that I wrote. I'm like, how far can I go? But I do explain the entire intelligence system as far as how you break down caveats. And, and again, I think what I dealt with these individuals, what I dealt with in Congress, what I've dealt with, and with QAnon and stuff like that, there's certainly parallels. And I think that's why this book, again, I think it's actually funnier. I think it's actually more humorous and more amusing than actual Bigfoot erotica. I do.
So right now, people that don't know this story are wondering why I'm talking to U.S. congressmen about Bigfoot erotica. So I want to take a step back because the context is why this book is important.
That's right.
You ran for Congress in 2018.
Yes.
And your opponent, whose name escapes me at the moment,
Leslie Coburn,
whose
whose daughter is Olivia Wilde.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her mother.
I mean,
Yeah.
So I ran against Leslie Coburn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leslie Coburn's daughter is Olivia Wilde, and she's now married to Jason Sudeikis, I believe.
And you were like sort of target number one for the Democrats because it was this particular district, Charlottesville.
Open seat.
Seat. It was viewed as a swing district, and they found an old tweet, I guess, between you and your buddies, joking about what's documented in this book.
Yes.
Your somewhat disturbing hobby of thinking about Bigfoot too much. And she accused you of writing a book about Bigfoot erotica.
Yes.
And she just made it up.
Made it up.
Like there's no documented evidence that any such thing was true.
No.
And I remember at the time, like we happened to be making a documentary with you and your wife Christine about bourbon, Silverback Distillery, right. And we were goofing around, and I asked you about Bigfoot, and Christine's like, "No, shut off the cameras! Do not let him talk about this."
Well, she was right to say that, obviously.
Well, but it was we had that footage, and clearly you were sort of. You're definitely a Bigfoot scholar. Mm-hmm. You know your shit. Like
I do.
You really do. But it was anything but erotica, so we ended up releasing that. Like
it was wonderful.
I'm a click hound just like anybody else, so I'm like, we got the scoop. Denver Riggleman talks about his Bigfoot fetish. Yes. But it all like the silliness of it all.
Yeah.
Is absurd, and I like before we came up here, I Googled Denver Riggleman Bigfoot erotica, mm-hmm. and I found an LA Times headline from the day after you won the election.
Yeah.
That Bigfoot, I think it was something to the effect of Bigfoot erotic devotee, now member of Congress.
Yeah, brutal.
And it's like
made up.
It's sort of a precursor to the sort of the kind of the media clickbait bullshit that we see today. Like, people just make stuff up, and you used to sort of count on, sure, candidates can throw mud at each other. I guess that's fair game. But the idea that the LA Times, a paper of record, at least at one point, just throws it up there and like, well, let's go with it. It's going to get lots of clicks.
So, and the night of, I remember I got a phone call, 7 p.m. the night that she tweeted this. And it was from my consultant. He goes, Denver, you're going to be number one on Twitter worldwide tomorrow. I'm like, why? Because with that Instagram stuff where, by the way, I mean, I told exactly the truth. I mean, yeah, Bigfoot's been a running joke since I pranked my wife in 2004. I mean, you know how many people thought that was ridiculous, and they think it's funny. And so, and I had written this book over 14 years, looking at Bigfoot belief systems, because it was very similar to what happened to me in the Balkans when I was there for Operation Allied Force, seeing people killing each other over things that would seem very minor to me and you, but they were not. Like the number of people that Ustashi killed, right? Or, things like that. And that was my background, was foreign affairs, former Yugoslavia. I said, is this applicable to Bigfoot? But I remember that night before that, he goes, you're going to be number one worldwide. I said, this is ridiculous. Like, you can tell it's a joke. I mean, it's just a tweet anyway. I mean, it's a tweet. He goes, yeah, but his daughter is Olivia Wilde. Her daughter is Olivia Wilde. I said, so? Well, millions of Twitter followers. But it's obviously a joke. I mean, it's the same type of disinformation I practiced, when I was an intelligence officer.
Yeah.
And, but it went crazy, and I will tell you, I would like to say on camera that, Stephen Colbert is full of shit, right, to do that to me. And so is Fallon and Kimmel and Saturday Night Live. If they wanted somebody funny, call me, right? Don't use somebody. But, I mean, I got hammered. And, I was called a pedophile. I was called all the things that the QAnon people are calling me now. But it was awful. And for me, I thought it was funny, but my family did not think it was quite as funny. And after about 48 hours, it wasn't funny anymore.
Yeah.
And that's because finally the New York Times, I know this is going to shock people, but it was the New York Times and the Rolling Stone who actually gave my interview verbatim that stopped it all in its tracks for the press, but not for the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who believed I was actually a Bigfoot erotica devotee.
Yeah, once it's out there, it just sort of
circles, right? And I still get that today, but I do find it interesting that there's actually now a Bigfoot erotica star in Bigfoot erotica literature named Denver Wiggleman. So I think that I actually am now living forever, right, under the term Wiggleman, right? And of course that'll be used against me if I were to ever do anything in public office again, this interview, but I don't give a shit, because I'm, you get to a point you're like,
I feel like you should get a piece of that, like a finder's fee or like
you heard about the Riggleman bump, right? The 8,000% increase in Pornhub searches for Bigfoot erotica after Bigfoot erotica came out on Twitter. I'm owed a little bit of money.
Yeah.
So we had the Riggleman bump, but the thing is, we joke about it, but at the time, I'm like, this actual disinformation spread by Twitter and actually run by the press is exactly what we did overseas. And it's also interesting to me now that's the exact same kind of thing that you see with conspiracy theories today, this social contagion that happens. And, and in the book, I wanted to get across in a fun way, but it doesn't turn out so fun at the end of the book. When you read the whole thing and how I encapsulate it, it's not so funny when it happens to you, or it's not so funny when belief systems are weaponized.
Yeah.
When myth is weaponized or conspiracy theories are weaponized. And whether it's the protocols of the elders of Zion all the way to, Joe Biden had SEAL Team 6 killed. And it's funny. It's Bigfoot. It is complicated. There's so many different belief systems that you've talked about, and they don't like each other either.
Yeah.
And that's what's incredible about this. If you believe Bigfoot is just some roaming, massive descendant of Homo erectus, I mean, the guys who believe that he's some kind of interdimensional long jumper through the harmonic universes protecting us from the Dracos. I mean, those two people don't like each other very much because it's a big different view of Bigfoot.
The politics, like it insults people who have put sort of an almost religious fervor in this. And I want to get into this, and I should point out that I was not nearly obsessed with Bigfoot as you, but my top research team has provided me with the Cryptozoology A to Z, the Encyclopedia of Loch Monsters, Sasquatch, Chupacabras, and other authentic mysteries of nature.
Yes.
And I want, for the uninitiated, there was in fact and this is the whole debate. We don't know if this guy is still around, but there was in fact a 10-foot standing ape, man, whatever you want to call it.
Yep, Gigantopithecus blackie.
Supposedly extinct, but you can't prove that either.
No. And, and that's the That's the wonderful part of this. I talk about this in the book. I said there's a difference in intelligence work between possibility and probabilities. And, I said the possibility of Bigfoot existing is always going to be there. Is it probable? No. If you look at the analysis and look at that, it's not probable, but it's possible. And I think that's what, again, people will be surprised because I know it's going to shock people right now. I'm not a big believer in Bigfoot, right? That wasn't what this was about. Did I run through the forest wearing a bacon necklace one night for fun? Yes, just to see if Bigfoot would come out, right? But I think
we're gonna do some B-roll for that particular statement.
That's right.
My wife just spit out her drink.
By the way, and I remember, Matt, come on now, you're gonna get me laughing about this own dang book I wrote. I'm talking to this person who said she was an amateur primatologist, which I don't know. I also talked to amateur scatologists, right, who told me they were amateur scatologists. I mean, so you look at crap as a volunteer? But anyway, so just very odd to me. But anyway, so...
Well, it's better than choosing it as a profession.
It's better than being in politics.
Yeah.
It's better than being a Republican in the 5th District of
and
Virginia.
Maybe you're a professional statistician.
Maybe. So, I remember talking to, she goes, she likes to, study simians on the side. I don't know. I mean, I wrote a Bigfoot on the book on the side, but she got very angry with me one day, and it's sitting around a fire. This is my second or third expedition with them. And she goes, I said, well, why don't you just bait them with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? I mean, they're delicious, right? Everybody wants a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And she got so angry. She goes, no, we're not doing this. Bigfoot is gluten, he's gluten intolerant. I said, what?
How do we know?
How do you know? And she goes, well, gorillas are gluten intolerant. I'm like, okay, so let me get this. So you're telling me there's this mythical creature because you think it's descended from Gigantopithecus blacki, not Homo erectus, because that's different. And I mean, that's the whole, one of the chapters I showed you, I showed because Bigfoot believers argue over genital size, right? And, whether it's I don't even know.
This is a family program.
It is, well, this is an adult travel book for those who are interested in conspiracy theories and Bigfoot's proclivities, to abscond with people at night. But she got incredibly angry about this gluten allergy. And we had somebody say at the same campfire, well, we have no proof that the alien grays are gluten intolerant. He's obviously an interstellar traveler. So now I have a real issue. Where do you start the argument, right? I don't know what to do with that argument. And that's almost like politics or almost like conspiracy theories. You're building up a truth based on things that are unprovable. Yeah. And I think that's why they're just so fascinating to me. And if people look up bigfootforums.com, it's not like forums like other things you've heard about in the past when we were young. But bigfootforums.com, there's hundreds of thousands of posts on there. And I would humbly submit, I think 10 to 15% of the population, maybe 20%, obviously believe Bigfoot's real. I think you're over 50% that they think he might be real. And, that's a massive statistic. I mean, you're talking 150 million people think that there's some large, hairy type of biped, whether he's a mystical being, whether he's a Native American myth, whether he's an interstellar traveler, or just some kind of lost, missing link, walking around the woods, screaming at people or using infrasound to make them piss themselves. And it's tough to prove that.
All right, so I've been reading, and I'm going to push back a little bit here because...
Which part, Matt? What part are we going to push back on? Infrasound making people piss themselves or jumping through dimensions?
Look, I've been on the internet. But you mentioned gorillas, and my crack research team has pointed out to me that the mountain gorilla was a recent discovery in the context of human history.
It was.
We just didn't know about the mountain gorilla.
Right.
So why don't, particularly if we're talking about not Sasquatch but Yeti, which travels in the Himalayas. It's hard to get around up there.
It is. It is tough to get around
and
up there.
Those guys, I mean, there could be like sort of this alternate universe up there where
they believe that.
They're thinking,
not kidding.
They're thinking big thoughts and probably going to solve world peace.
I think they can.
But let's talk about, like, this is important. We need to
get to the meat of the matter.
We need to get to the meat of the matter.
Yes.
There are those, and I believe there's 3 categories, but there's probably all sorts of subgenres.
There's 4 major categories I point out, and there's subcategories. I even talk about a 5th category, where Bigfoot will attack you with infrasound or terror thoughts. They think that he's evolved over the years to shoot you with like a laser beam of telepathic holy shit to your head, where you want to run screaming through the woods. And also that he uses infrasound to sort of jiggle your insides. Sound odd, but that's really what they think.
So there's people that believe that this is just a natural descendant. It's an animal. It's out there. And
yes.
And those may be the most reasonable. I don't know.
They are. Those are the BEs, the biological entity believers.
Yeah.
I'm military, so I put acronym beside some of these, right? So the BEs believe that it's, and I say simply, it's simply some kind of missing link, or it's a descendant of either the ape side or the human side, or some kind of mix in between. And I can go into this, but that's why I think one of the most interesting discussions I had on the BEs, the biological entity believers, was somebody telling me that he absolutely can't be a gorilla. And I said, well, explain that to me. He's hairy and seems to like trees and such, and scrapes for berries, you guys say, mostly vegetarian, except for the guys who believe he likes to jump on deer from trees like Rambo.
Not PBJs.
Not PBJs because he's gluten intolerant.
Yeah.
And we don't want a gluten reaction from Bigfoot because it could piss him off right when he's coming through your camp. But they said, obviously, he's not an ape. And I'm like, why? He goes, well, he's proportionate, and gorillas have the, smallest genitalia in the simian kingdom. So he's obviously a man because people can actually see that he's proportionate anatomically. And I mean, that's, so there is a subset, right? There's subsets within subsets, as you said.
So there is an obsession about Bigfoot genitalia.
Absolutely, there is. And it's also,
it's for science.
It is for science. One of the Bigfoot forum topics, which I thought you would find fascinating, is Bigfoot. Why would he rip out his weenie, right? And I think that's pretty much sort of encapsulates, I think, the entire portion of that Bigfoot belief system.
We're going to subject this show to a heavy edit.
Well, I'm just having journalistic integrity.
I know you're just
about forums. So
you're not telling people what to believe. You're just putting.
I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
So, but the BEs are crazy, with that kind of argument, but they seem to be the most reasonable.
Yeah, and then there's the mind control Bigfoot.
There's the Quaventalure, which actually can interdimensionally long jump, right? If you want to read the Voyagers, I think it's by Ashiana Deanne. The Bigfoot is here to protect us from the other 12-strand DNA beings that are stacked in the harmonic universe trying to take over our world, I think in the 264 million year war between us and them through the dimensions. But, Bigfoot is here to protect us from the Dracos. And also, as you know, some of those higher beings used the chupacabra, created the chupacabra, and used dinosaurs for lookouts. And a lot of people believe that. And so that would be the mystical being who can also give you prophecies if you'd like. You can pray to Bigfoot, almost like a hirsute deity, a deity. You can pray to him like a god, and he will give you answers based on the fact that he sees all things simultaneously based on his ability to look through dimensions.
But that Bigfoot is still an earthly being?
No, that Bigfoot actually can appear or leave at will. And since he has multiple DNA strands, he's figured out how to manipulate time and space, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's a Quaventalure. And by the way, I had a guy come to my house who said he had a prophecy that we had a spirit in our house. This is in the book. And that Bigfoot needed to purge that spirit. And came in there and did purge that spirit after we had a big bowl of chili. So, that's another belief system.
Yeah. And, as you point out in the book, people passionately believe these things. And I was thinking about this just in the context of belief systems, as you say, and passions that people have. And you have an unhealthy passion for Bigfoot.
I would say.
Research.
For research. And I think it is unhealthy. But I think part of that passion did come from service. And I know this sounds incredible, but when I was, there's a certain incident I had in Romania in a town called Craiova, where I saw something so awful based on a belief system concerning a very small child that stuck with me. And I wondered, with the horror of it, why would people believe this?
Yeah.
And this book really started, when I jotted notes about the certain types of people that I met. But it really started to roll heavy, I think, 2006, 2007, when we were tracking Soleimani from Iran into Iraq. And I started really thinking, like, why why these belief systems, why conspiracies, why all this. And really that book, it's an unhealthy fascination with how people think and why they believe what they believe.
Well, I don't have an answer for this, but there's healthy belief systems, and then there's unhealthy belief systems, and then there's belief systems that allow demagogues and tyrants to get us to kill each other.
That's why
that's
this book should scare people.
That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
And I don't know where that line is, and I have a generally libertarian attitude about knowledge and what people believe, and that this stuff can work itself out over time. And I sort of believe that there's a getting at truth that we get to when people are sort of free to pursue the craziest theories that they want.
Yes, and I'm okay with it. I mean, if you believe that, if you want to worship a head of lettuce and you believe that somehow gives you insight into the Holy of Holies, frickin' go for it, right? I think it's what I find interesting is when people actually get angry about something that is in the possible and not in the probable.
Yeah.
And I think, again, this is not a book where I say there's no Bigfoot. And I hope people, and I think when they read it, it's like, oh shit, man, this guy, he's not saying there's no Bigfoot. He's just saying that why do belief systems need to get violent? Or why are these belief systems about charlatans or the grift?
Yeah.
Right? And all of these things, I think, would really encompass, dangerous conspiracy theories. And Matt, I wish I knew where that line was sometimes. But I saw that line starting to get blurred when I was doing the research here. And I saw that line obviously blurred in the former Yugoslavia. And I saw that line blurred in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So that's the issue.
I mean, it's a nice metaphor because there's sort of Bigfoot tourists who are really just having a good time.
There's those, yeah.
And then there's true believers, and then there's grifters. And it seems like a good metaphor for politics, actually.
There is. You got true believers, you got grifters. And, I talk about the EL in this book, which somebody said Randy McBride should play the expedition leader in this book. But, what I'm looking at is that I paid to do this. I think my wife and I paid $2,000 a piece to go on this Bigfoot expedition in a public park, where we had some reservist. He said he was a military reservist using a 4-foot stick to say, this is how you tell the gait of a Bigfoot from footprint to footprint. What? So we just had some weird things happening there. But again, I think it comes down to, I just don't know, just when you're talking to the Bigfoot individuals, and I know I'm having a segue here, when you're talking to these individuals, and if you prove something without a shadow, that like you're like, this can't happen because of this, they automatically get angry.
Yeah. And
I saw that, a real anger. I mean, we're talking about Bigfoot, right? I had one individual tell me, you got to have faith. No, I don't. Like, no, actually, you're talking about an 8-foot tall being that smells like, that can actually, by the way, I don't know if you know this, Bigfoot can also emit a very specific odor to drive you away, sort of like a skunk, like the world's biggest skunk. You believe that's happening, and he throws rocks at you, and he tears off the heads of squirrels and puts them in on your porch to tell you he loves you. And so I'm just supposed to take that as faith? No. Tell me why Bigfoot rips the heads off of squirrels. I really want to know, right? Well, we don't know. It's just we think it's a sign of love. Yeah. I said, oh, so sort of like your cat dragging in a mouse.
Yeah.
Is that? And they're like, yeah, exactly. And what do you mean exactly? So, I mean, I think when I'm talking about these belief systems, I want people to laugh their ass off, sure. But there's a time when myth is weaponized and myth becomes dangerous. And I've seen it. But I've seen it for real. And I wrote a funny book that by the end you're like, maybe I should be scared a little.
Yeah. So this is, we're actually recording this the day before the election.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about presidential politics at all, and we're just hoping and praying that our houses and our country is still standing after this election is over.
Yes.
We should toast to that.
Toast. Cheers.
Cheers to the country standing.
Yes.
And it strikes me that, and maybe this was always the case, and I think social media is probably, I don't like the word weaponized, but it's sort of exaggerated these tendencies that we have to sort of ignore facts and focus on sort of emotional attachment or belief systems, and you see that in my view, I'm sort of obsessed about the lockdowns and how sort of anti-science they seem to be. We've never done this before, and there's scant scientific evidence that this is actually a healthy thing. And that doesn't even get into the trade-offs of that. But it seems to be a religious system And it seems like you either believe it or you don't believe it, and either side on those fringes is sort of passionately like, they don't really care about the facts.
No.
And I'm looking at the graphs, and I'm looking at the data, and I'm looking at the history of pandemics, and I'm trying to honestly understand what the trade-offs are, the health trade-offs, the economic trade-offs. But I think that's weird. Like I think the fact that I sort of try to seek out facts is not normal for a human being. I'm an economist, not a human being. But what do we do with that? Because
why would you seek out facts, Matt, when you could be part of one tribe or the other?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You know, you just talked about not seeking out facts, this emotional thing. I had sent a letter that I know nobody read, but up to the National Command Authority, and I said, hey, why don't we use data, right? We can all say, probably should wear a mask in a nursing home. Let's do that. What if we had data-driven analytics on the places that have the least contagion and the most contagion, and let those places stay open as far as business? Because, you know, government has this tendency to kill a mosquito with a sledgehammer, right? There's no subtlety to it. There's no nuance. There's no data-driven stuff, real science behind it. And I've seen that in Virginia. I've seen that, you know, by the way, I mean, you know, I can say this. I received 2 letters anonymously from the food safety sort of commissar of Virginia, saying that we weren't holding to the COVID guidelines enough. I'm like, where did it come from? Well, it's anonymous. It's from the snitch hotline. You know, we were kids. It was snitches get stitches, right? But you know, it's from the snitch hotline. And I think what you're saying, Matt, that I've said both sides. Let's be data driven. We should open some places up. Well, you're a murderer. Well, we should probably wear a mask in a nursing home. Well, you're a piece of crap because you're getting away of our freedom. And you're right. There seems like there's no ability to say, well, how do we look at data at both things? What if we did that? And I've tried to be that way. I have been that way. And that's gotten me in a bit of trouble because it seems like I piss off the fringes that seem to be the ones that really bubble up on social media. Yeah. And I've had that unique ability to make everybody angry the last 2 years and to do some great things because of it. But to make people angry because I'm like, that's not even how an analyst, that's not even how a guy would look at it looking at the numbers. They wouldn't look at it that way. That just doesn't make sense. And you could get in a lot of trouble from your tribe, you know, if you step over that line.
That's a great segue to where I want to go next, because we've been talking about potentially mythical creatures.
Yes.
I'm not denying Bigfoot, by the way, because you refuse to deny that there's a government file, but
well, I don't want to alienate any Bigfoot voters if I'm going to run in the future, and
right.
There's a huge hidden majority out there.
Yeah, there's a swing vote.
There's a swing vote. Well, let's go back to Bigfoot erotica.
Yeah, but now I've even forgotten what I was going to ask. So there's this mythical creature in American politics called the Independent.
Oh, it's mythical. Yeah,
and
I feel like I am one.
And I'm saying this as a libertarian that has predicted for years that the upside of social media and the democratization of knowledge, that somehow the two-party duopoly was going to finally face competition, and I was predicting the emergence of third and fourth and fifth parties and all that stuff. And I still believe that is true. There's all sorts of legal barriers to entry erected by those two parties. But you're flirting with a independent run for governor in Virginia.
I am.
And we probably need to take a step back to explain why it is that you will not be a congressman next term. You were caught red-handed residing over the marriage of 2 men who happened to be friends and staffers of yours.
Yeah, they helped so much.
Part of your family.
Love them.
And this was so outrageous to a small, what appears to be a fairly small but motivated faction of conservative Christian activists in your district. Tell that story, because it sort of gets to the question of can there be independence?
Yeah, I mean, I think the next book I'm writing a couple, but the next one is called The Accidental Congressman, right? Because I was called at my distillery. I was a senior consultant then, Matt, at the Pentagon for electronic warfare and countermeasures, and also for holistic network modeling, right? So probably now people understand why I wrote this book, right? Got a phone call, and I won this bizarre one-vote committee vote because the guy before me got out because of alcoholism, which is ironic. I own a distillery, but that's probably another show. But so, and who I beat was somebody who was so far right and really considers themselves a dominionist, that I came in as a guy who, even when they asked me, are you an evangelical Christian? I'm like, it's none of your business, but I'm not. I mean, and I'm saying things that I know makes Republican consultants squirm, right? I believe something looked out for me a few times in places that were awful, but I'm not that, right? And I think part of this too, I was raised LDS, right? And, I'm not really practicing anything. I was raised LDS and my grandparents were Southern Baptist and, I had a bizarre upbringing. And, so I thought, well, goodness, I won by one vote, so I must have a mandate. But so I'm gonna do exactly what I think I should do as the right thing. So I'm taking votes, I'm doing my thing, and then and Alex and Rick, they come and said, Denver, would you marry us? I'm like, sure. I honestly, it wasn't like I'm like, my political future. What do I do here? If I was thinking about my political future, I would never marry them in that specific district. But I married them in an incredible ceremony. So I officiated a same-sex wedding. The issue that I had wasn't just the same-sex wedding, though, when I went to Southside. The fact is it was an interracial same-sex wedding. And I think that's the thing that really surprised me was that. And also, as you know, I have a stance on marijuana that doesn't really align with Republicans. By the way, I'm growing hemp right now. So I think those things really...
And your stance is decriminalize it, get out of it.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Yeah.
I mean, we're to a point. I mean, I make liquor for God's sakes, Matt. I mean, it's a controlled substance right here. And it's a good one. But I think that that's why I'm saying, listen, this is ridiculous. And people are like, well, Denver, it's a gateway drug. I had somebody on the floor tell me, like, Denver, you're so full of crap. You just want kids to get on heroin and you want them to get on cocaine and you want them to smoke crack. And I'm like, no, man, I just don't want a guy who has a joint, to go to jail for something that is and I know this is scientifically, it is not worse than what we're drinking now, brother. It's just not.
Right.
But when I did that same-sex wedding, I officiated it, I think I made a big mistake in the political world, and that's in a radio interview. I said, if they want to come after this libertarian, this guy who's liberty-minded, they can pack a lunch. And they certainly took that seriously. And I will tell you this, I was sitting with my wife, Christine, who you know well, and one of the most amazing women in my life and everything, and we're sitting there. She goes, honey, this, you're done. I mean, if you do this wedding, it's okay, baby. I support you, but you're done politically. And I said, it's okay. I said, if I'm done politically because I officiate a same-sex wedding between two people who love each other, then so be it. And but and I want to make this confession now. I didn't really believe it. Yeah. I thought that just my incredible charisma and good looks, I'm sort of the chubby Tom Cruise of Congress, right? But I honestly thought with policy and trying to, and I kept telling people, you're allowed to live the way you want to live. My job is to protect. I can't say I'm an evangelical Christian. I'm not. That's a lie. But I also can't say that I think that you guys should direct how people live. I'm not going to lie. That can't happen,
Yeah.
It can't happen, Matt. And that cost me because I refused. So here's what happened. The committee member said, hey, if you pay us, you're not going to have an opponent. I refused to pay off the committee members, and I committed the ultimate sin of officiating a same-sex wedding because I refused to pay off these people for graft too because they're grifters. And, if there's something I despise, right, is this underbelly of grifting that's just the person that they want to latch onto, or the fact that I refuse to pay them knowing that they would never have any audience with me. It's very difficult when you call me a baby-killing sodomite or call me a fag lover, right, or say that I'm the tool of the Antichrist. That's what I was called. My wife was called the spawn of Satan. And I figured with me being the tool of the Antichrist and her being the spawn of Satan, we're the new power couple of Virginia, right? But but I think that's the issue that we have is that it's very difficult, Matt, to say I'm Virginia Republican, I'm GOP, when I think we have a party that's just small enough to fit in the bedroom right now. And it's hard. It's almost makes me nauseous to think that I would have to go to some committee and say, hey, guys, yeah, I did this. Like, you are evil. You're awful. We might hold our nose and vote for you because we want a Republican to win. And I'm like, what kind of tribal ridiculousness have I got myself into?
Yeah. I feel like you're sort of a bellwether for a lot of Americans, I mean, you have some libertarian instincts, but you're not a libertarian. You're an independent.
I'm not a...
Or you're trying to figure out what the hell you are.
I really am, because, I wasn't in politics, Matt. Me and you've had that discussion. Somebody's like, Denver, I'm really happy with you sometimes, and sometimes, I want to throat punch you, And I think a lot of it has to do with my background in the military and what I saw overseas, sort of... I'm a China hawk because I've seen what China's done. I've been in South America. I've seen what they've done as far as the debt trap they're putting countries into. So I have this bizarre sort of, I'm so libertarian on the social side, like I don't give a rat's, But when it comes to sort of us playing in sort of the world hegemonic games, I'm like, we better, or we're going to be fighting wars on our soil. And it's sort of the counterterrorism slant too. And I love having those discussions in a very positive way, and I do, right? Whether it would be with a Justin or with a Massey or with the people that I talk to, and somebody like, Denver, you're so full of crap, man, on FISA. And I'm like, yeah, but there's this. And, Jim Jordan, and even Jim came up with stuff. And so I've always been very specific about how I argue that, and I think they appreciated that honesty, right? I never hid. But so I'm almost like this, I don't know what I am, man. I just want to do what's best for the Americans at that time based on whatever we have in front of us. And I don't know if that makes me cut out for politics or not. And I don't know if I am. I mean, to be honest with you.
Well, and that's sort of the question. Can an independent or a third or fourth party thrive in a system that has gotten so tribal and so angry? Like whatever happens tomorrow, and I'm not going to make any predictions because I try not to look like an ass when I can help it. But it is
failed miserably.
Well, I'm learning from you. I wait till you do something, and then I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
That's a good plan. My wife does the same thing.
Yeah. But like you have this tribal election where virtually no one is voting for their guy.
No, they're not.
They're all like voting against those guys because those guys are awful.
They're going to destroy America.
Yeah.
You're a fascist or a Marxist.
Yeah. And I feel like there's probably a lot of us that are neither a fascist or a Marxist.
It's so true.
I'm hoping.
I hope it's
and we're registering as independents. We're registering as libertarians. We're looking for a place where I don't really care who you marry as long as you don't hurt me or take my stuff.
Which is a fantastic book, by the way.
It's a bestseller.
So it.
No pressure. We'll see.
No pressure. My God,
see.
No pressure. Bigfoot. I don't know if I'm going to match that because it was a great book. This was something. There's a couple things, Matt. I should have taken your advice at the beginning, and I'm not kidding about that. As soon as this came out on Bigfoot Erotica, you said release your book.
Yeah.
This has been done since 2018, and this is the book that I was accused of for Bigfoot Erotica. This is the book, and I went against.
And I read that draft, and it's essentially the same draft.
Same draft
with an update at the end.
It's an update at the end and the beginning. That's it. And the beginning is thanking my Democratic opponent for introducing me to Bigfoot Erotica, right? And making, Pornhub a lot of money. But I think I should have done it then. And I go back on it. You know why I didn't do it? Because my consultants told me not to. And I love them. God love them. Like, Denver, you got such a bright future. Why would you release this? People are going to make fun of you forever, even though this book is not about Bigfoot Erotica. That's the other one with Denbar Wiggleman. Right, that's the Bigfoot Erotica star, right? This is Denver Riggleman, right? And, and I said, I got to release it. And even now, people beg me not to release this book. They're like, even though it's about conspiracy theories, even though you're outspoken about QAnon, you're outspoken about the coded language and memes that are now used by the far left for command and control, you're doing the analytics. Please, God, don't release this because we think you could be governor, man. We think you can go further one day because people love you. You're charismatic. I'm like, oh, so here's the thing. And you know what? They're probably right. If this book is not called The Hope of Our Fathers. This is called Bigfoot, It's Complicated.
Right.
Right? But when you read this, it should give you hope that people can sort of get beyond this conspiracy mindset. But the issue I'm having is that I had to do this. I had to do it. And I'm pissed. I had to do this because there's so much disinformation about me. The same thing that you see with conspiracy theories, same thing you see with tribes. I should have released this book. And I'm angry today that I don't want to say it was cowardly. I thought I was doing this professional thing.
Yeah.
Denver, release the accidental congressman. Denver, release QAnon and me, like Marley and me. But, release QAnon, do this, right? But not Bigfoot. I'm like, but guys, this book is now. Mm-hmm. This is what's happening. right? They had disinformation. I had people calling my freaking home phone telling me I must love little children because she put out something saying I like Bigfoot erotica. Oh, and I was a Nazi, right?
Right.
After fighting against ethnic cleansing in Kosovo, right? Just ridiculous stuff. And I'm like, how dare her? How dare her? And I'm like, well, damn, how dare me, right? You know? And I think that bothers me. It bothers me that I didn't do it then. It bothers me that now, what if I got in front of that curve? Where would I be? But I still would officiate that marriage, Matt. I still would have told people to pound sand. I still would have told people that marijuana is not the biggest threat to America. It's probably other things. I hate to tell you. You know, we got other issues like domestic terrorism and stuff. Now, that's really shitty, right? Yeah. So, and that's why I think I'm excited, but I'm also a little bit angry at myself because I should have followed the advice of people who actually cared about me and not cared about what a political career looked like. And I think that's the difference.
Well, let's talk about those incentives because I used to work on the Hill and I watched, and this is when Bigfoot was still a baby, by the way. I'm that old, but I sort of watched, and if you want to be a reformer, you got to do what you did. You actually either have to run, you have to go work there. My libertarian friends that sort of frown on people that step into the arena don't understand that unless you understand how the decision making actually works, you can't actually try to fix it. And I don't have any silver bullet solutions, but the institutional incentives for everyone to fall in line and join their team, and to constantly take a dive.
Yep.
Because I remember, like we did this, we started this series with you called The Freshman, and
it's beautiful.
And the idea was to watch this sort of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed freshman come in, and I'm going to balance the budget, and I'm going to rein in government, and we're going to do all this stuff, and it sort of screeched to a halt.
People have no idea. They have no idea. The first thing is your dues, right? Get an A committee. And I got an A committee.
And it's all for sale.
It's all for sale, right? Your dues are, as a freshman, your dues are only $255,000, right? Right, that's it.
And you got an A committee because you were one of the few bright spots in otherwise dismal GOP performance.
Dismal. I was the only one to win a competitive district. I won it by over the margin of R+6. People are like, Denver, you're the future of the party, right? And and I'm sitting there, Matt, 1,400 people in a church parking lot, and they're yelling "fag lover" at me from their freaking windows. That's where I went, right? Because I officiated that same-sex wedding. Here I am, 100 heritage score. People are like, God, man, his votes are great. He does great. Every now and then he goes sideways on foreign policy or the military, because he thinks that, he votes like a rhino when it comes to funding the military. But you know what? He voted really good.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about, what's a rhino anyway? I'm certainly a Republican in name only because I'm so damn independent, right? I don't think that's even a bad thing anymore. I mean, if you're a Republican in name only and you're against people, living the way they want to live, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a Republican. But I think what happened was you immediately, once you get on financial services, my background, as you know, as a CEO, I did some cool things. The pressure, and I'm like, I'm immune to pressure. Matt, I'm a self-made guy. I don't need this paycheck. The pressure is this. Here's the pressure. You want to know, well, you know this. I'm not telling you anything. Well, Denver, you just follow the team on this vote. Next time, we got your 6. We got you. But we really need your yes vote now. So, Denver, you're so damn independent, we're going to put you on the whip team. Holy shit, man. I'm a freshman on the whip team? Oh, dang, I'm cool. Denver, we're putting you on the AIML working group because you're background intelligence, artificial intelligence, machine learning working group. Man, I must be the man, right? And what they're doing, and God bless them, what they're doing is they're actually absorbing you. You're being absorbed, right? So, and that's the thing that
you become part of the machine.
You have to. Because if you don't become part of the machine, all of a sudden, your bills aren't getting through the committee chair, right? Or, you know what? We think you've already sort of made, all of a sudden your check that comes from the frickin' NRCC might be a little bit lower.
Right.
Right? Well, wait a minute. I got 28,000 last time. Why am I getting 13,000? And so,
I mean, I've talked to members who vote wrong on some big bill, and there's always a big bill. And, and they're like, your money's going to dry up.
Oh yeah,
we're not going to help you in your next election. Did you have that experience?
The experience I had was this thing when we talk about cult of personality. And boy, I'm going to get a lot of trouble in this interview, so we might as well, Don't go against the big man, whether you're right or wrong. Big man's going to get you.
Yeah.
Who's the big man? It's President Trump.
Right.
Right? Listen, don't go against him on this vote. I know we probably should, but don't do it because, man, you're a fast mover, man. You're leadership material, right? And it got to the point, just like with the same-sex wedding, it took me about 7 or 8 months. Man, honestly, I took votes I would take back in a heartbeat, and nobody wants to say that, right? Well, I read bills, I do, and there's some things you're like, well, shite, looking back 3 months later, you're like, was I caught up in the talking points coming from the whip team or coming from the leadership team or the NRCC conference, right? Was that, did I get caught up in the talking points? No, I read something. I'm pretty sure that's what it said because I have above an 8th grade reading level, right? But they're saying that really means this, right? Huh. And I'm on the whip team now. I love being on the whip team. I can talk anybody, I can talk an Eskimo into buying an ice box. So, this is what I need to do. This is great. And you start to actually lose. It takes you about 17 minutes to lose why you actually wanted to run in the first place. And why did I run? I hated friggin' regulations. I hated bullies. And why would I become the very thing I hated just because I think I had to win to become the thing that I didn't want to that I wanted to help with? And you're like, well, winners make history. That's what the leadership tells you, right? Who cares? 50% of the votes. Who cares if you agree with them, man? Winners make history. You want to pick 1 or 2 things to do great at. The other stuff is slough, man. It's slough. It sucks. And I really think, I thought that I was this high IQ guy. There's no way I could be swayed. I'm Air Force intelligence, for God's sake. I'm a CEO. I'm the man. And I got more humbled in these 2 years than I've ever been humbled in my life. And it taught me a lot.
So how does a guy like you, or the next guy like you that wants to run into the meat grinder, how can you be more independent?
You have to run that way. There's no other way. You got to be brave enough to say, I'm not doing it. It's not about me making, and that's dumb, right? It's so dumb, right? We got a 2-party system that's been here forever, and you have this stupid cat who knows how to play the game, refused to do it, and I'm talking about myself. I refused to play the game with the local committees because I thought they were corrupt, and I thought, to be honest with you, I thought that they were had the IQ of a box of hammers, right? And I'm over here trying to play a big boy game while I'm trying to play the committee game, right? And trying to balance that and trying to make them happy and that guy happy and that guy happy. And when I make a fundraising phone call, Matt, right? I'm here to protect the republic against the socialists coming, the NRC. I'm like, this isn't me, right? You have to run that way. You got to run as a liberty-minded asshole.
We have our title.
That's the only way to do it. You have to, you can't listen to every person who wants to make a little bit, and even people I love, God dang, I love them. They've been with me since the beginning, but that's their job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not mine. I don't need this. I don't need to rack and stack and go up from bottom to top, work my way up. I'm not even wired that way. That's not the American way. American way isn't fit into a gap all the way up the ladder. The American way is go in there, swing the baseball bat, and kick the shit out of somebody. And I thought I was, but I wasn't, because you're still in a 2-party system. And if somebody is not, and you can't, when I say liberty-minded asshole, I'm not talking about somebody who is actually just like, oh, you don't like that? Screw you. I'm not talking about Three Stooges hurting people, right? I'm talking about you gotta be like, no. We can't do that. And people are going to destroy you. And I've been there. That same-sex wedding, I got destroyed by my party. I got absolutely eviscerated. I got run over the coals. I got called everything you can imagine. And so did those guys I married. And I think if you're not that, what I've learned is I didn't know shit, right? That wasn't me. And you can't change it from the inside. The only way we beat the Taliban was bombing them from the outside, right? And that's the thing, right? We collapsed their caves. And you got to collapse the caves of those people who are stuck in them. And it's the only way I know. And I learned a valuable lesson about myself, and I think that's the most humbling thing. And I wish I could have a statesman-like answer, like, well, with the GDP, I saw that we were spending too much. No, you have to be a person who says, I care more about people than I do about party. And I think if you do that, maybe you can make a difference. And that's why I think people are terrified that I'm going to run as an independent. I had the Republican chairman of the Virginia party say, Denver, for the love of God, please don't run. You're going to destroy us. Who's us? You? A paycheck? You want to get reelected as a party chairman? I'd rather be freaking slinging drinks at a Sonic drive-thru, right? Not that there's anything wrong with slinging drinks at a Sonic drive-thru. So, I think that's the issue. And, listen, that just came to me. You got to be that. I just, if you're not brave enough to do that, then run as a Republican or Democrat. That's all I got.
I'm almost sad that we got away from Bigfoot, but I'm going to leave it right there because that's pretty awesome. So thank you, Denver. And
thanks. Bigfoot, it's complicated. He's a liberty-minded
where do we get where do we get like this is going to be right up there with The Wealth of Nations and maybe Atlas Shrugged.
Atlas Shrugged, I'm the new Ayn Rand of hirsute beings. Yeah. That's great,
It's
Bigfoot,
just like Atlas Shrugged, but
Bigfoot lives by its own
hair,
ego. I don't know. Am I close? But and I read Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead, obviously. But I think I wrote this book. One of it's for honor, even though the F word is probably used 50 times in this book. But I think the other thing is, people need to realize that your belief system's yours, but people can't take it from you. You can't weaponize it either. You can't make it bad, And God, that's so simplistic. But damn it. And if you don't have people willing to step up and say that is wrong, that's not what we are, I think we sort of lose who we are as Americans. And if I lose every time running independent libertarian, or everybody wants me to run as this new Republican, but if I lose every time running as an independent or whatever, and it's because I refuse to bow or kiss the ring, frickin' I'm happy, brother. F them. And the thing is that I don't need them anyway. I'll just keep fighting in my own fight. So anyway.
Bigfoot, It's Complicated. A congressman and former intelligence officer explores the politics of true believers, Bigfoot and otherwise.
Yes,
Amazon.com.
Thank you, brother. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm out. God, are you out?
I'm out, yeah.
My God. Well, you know what? That means it was good.
Yeah.
Bigfoot doesn't drink, by the way. He's gluten allergy.
Thanks for watching Kibbe on Liberty. By now, you know this is the most important event of your week. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Click the little bell so you get notifications. Kibbe on Liberty, mostly honest conversations with mostly interesting people.